Hello and welcome to this very short first look exploring session looking at a play featuring some thievish type people and a slightly gullible tapster. There isn't really a name for this. There are various names given to it by various different people. You can find the text of it actually at the Lost Plays database, as well as possibly elsewhere as well. Yes, I will endeavour to remember to put a link to that in the show description. We're reading a slightly tidied up version of it. It's not very tidy there, because that's not really what they do. So we have tidied it up, but there's full of little gaps, because it is just a little fragmentary thing. So we have some of our regulars here in the room. We have Lois, we have Eric, we have Aliki, we have Elizabeth, we have Alan, and I got lost when I was just saying people's names, so hopefully I said everybody's and not some people's twice. And I'm Robert, and I will keep things moving along. There are only 3 parts in this little fragment, and I say there are little gaps in the fragment as it comes to us as well, and a few things where we're not quite sure what they might be or might not be. So I'll say, who fancies being a tapster? Who fancies being a tapster? Was that a wave, Elizabeth? Elizabeth waved. I don't know if you just moved your arm.
I was thinking like Gullible Tapster.
Yeah. Who wants to be the first other person in the room? Lois, you can be the first other speaker, okay. And the second other speaker, Aliki. You can do that. And I tell you what. Alan, you can read the stage directions. I won't read the stage directions. There we are. That's the excitement for you. So do sort of mark if there are any gaps marked in your script where we don't know what the word is. Just sort of pause or do or something. There are a few inferred words that we're not necessarily certain of, but say those inferred ones in square brackets. And we'll see how we go. Without further ado, Tapster, mid-scene, you're in an inn, there are some people there, Tapster, some stuff is going down.
There is a man that lodged in our house last night that hath 300 marks in. He carries it unto the king's exchequer, for certain lands was lately forfeited. And that same man must needs go o'er the, where you may very well go meet with. There is not any bears him company.
Thanks, good my boy, but art thou sure of the...
I am sure of it, for I did see the gold last night, when as he gave my master it, to lay up till he called for it today.
Of thee in faith. Come, let us sup this liquor.
He drinks, the other takes tobacco.
Is good tobacco? Pray thee give me some.
Oh, methinks 'tis very good. I like it well.
The second drinks tobacco.
Now by this pipe, it is exceeding but yet 'tis good enough to make a smoke. Here. Wilt thou some tobacco?
No, I thank you, sir.
I pray thee now.
I pray you pardon me, good Master George, for I never took any in all my life.
I pray thee try how thou canst take it.
To fulfill your mind, sir, I will.
He takes tobacco and chokes.
How now, my youth? 'Tis good, 'tis good. 'Twill clear thee well.
Had it not been at this gentleman's request, I would not have taken it. Therefore, I am much beholding to you, sir.
But what's to pay?
6pence, and you are welcome.
We'll pay thee when we do return again.
As you please, Mr. George.
Now you may see I may be credited. This honest boon companion tells me so. By heaven, I will requite thee well for that, if that these hands and the blade of mine do last. But dost thou hear? Do we not stay too long? Perhaps he will be gone before...
No, I warrant you. He is in the house, and I will send him packing presently.
Come, let us haste to watch his passing by.
But do you hear, Master George? You will remember me.
We shall see you again soon.
Exit Tapster.
I warrant ye will remember thee, but not one cross of silver that you getst if thou chopst off this head of mine to make a bottle or a football of. Did I not gull him finely of his beer?
Oh, in faith, most gallantly. But is he not acquainted with thee well?
I never saw him in my life before, but once at Shoreditch in a bawdy house. What damned whore they be to tell my name. Before the Lord, I'll slit their noses off.
And there the pages run out.
Yes, there the fragment ends on that charming note from the second interlocutor, whose name is George, as we find out from the text as we go along. Yes, slitting the noses of ladies of the night is not unknown. It is. Yes, unfortunate practice. So we have the tobacco lobby working hard and fast again. We've got the taps. It's interesting. I sort of question, the given title of this. The Gullible Tapster. The Tapster's talking to these people. He's organising them to rob someone. So he obviously thinks that they are Confederates, even if he's possibly wrong in that point, and they're all getting along very nicely. And then, they're saying, oh, well, we'll just go and do this robbery and be right back and we'll pay the bill then. It's not that much. He's not that gullible. He's a bit trusting, and he probably shouldn't trust people who are about to go off and rob someone on his behalf. But, it is interesting. Many of the little gaps there are fillable either with firm fills or just... we can make something up. They're not too difficult, and it had a certain life to it. It's an interesting little scene. I'm quite curious what the rest of the play would have been about. Was it the subplot, or was it the main meat of the action? It's really interesting. Thoughts on the room, Aliki?
It's interesting to see that the old joke of getting some newbie to smoke and then laughing at him when he coughs is that venerable. But
yeah, yes, and well, at that point, tobacco is hot gossip in town. It's this text, by the way, is orbiting the early 17th century in some way. The dating range is 1600, 1620, but it's thought to be relatively early in that dating range. We've covered quite a few plays where we've got smoking as a hot issue for discussion. Lois?
The only bit of it that I wondered about, or thought one might re-edit it, is the speech with the second crook saying, "Now you may see I may be credited." I wondered if that is all him, or whether some of it could be somebody else. This is clearly a reference to the sort of proverb about ask my fellow if I be honest. He's saying this honest man tells you that I'm honest, so you can believe me. But I just wondered about, by heaven, I will requite thee well for that, if that these hands and blade of mine do lost. Could be somebody else.
Well, that element of the text is quite damaged by the looks of it. And in fact, we don't actually have clear speech prefixes for who's speaking at that point. So it could be mixed up in a different way. Yes, I like that thought.
Because I think that is the way, didn't they write the characters' names, and they folded the piece of paper, I think, in three, and then the biggest bit was in the middle for the speeches, but I think the characters' names were written in the left side and the stage directions on the right side. So if the paper was torn on the left, you probably wouldn't have the characters' names.
Yes, it does look like
it would make sense, because a lot of the rest of it is 2 lines for a speaker. So that 6-line section there could easily be 2, 1, 2.
Yes, who are the interlocutors? Precisely how we break that up. By heaven, I will requite thee well for that. Is that the tapster again? Do we think?
Might be first thief, I think.
But... I think it's tapster, as you please, Mr. George, second for 2 lines, then first for 2 lines, then second again.
Yeah.
Would make sense.
So I got a bit lost as you said that. So because you're saying second and then lines, and it's sort of
Yeah.
So now you may see I may be credited. That's still second.
Yeah. This honest boon companion tells me so is second.
Yeah.
Then by heaven I will requite thee well for that first.
Mm-hmm.
If that these hands and blade of mine do last, which gives a couplet to the first speaker. Mm. And then second speaker comes back, but dost thou hear? Do we not stay too long? Mm. Perhaps it will be gone before
we come, I would imagine. Yeah. Yes, the only other thing I wondered about was this honest boon companion tells me so. It really ought to be tells you so, unless that line turns out to be the tapster. Now you may see I may be credited, and then I suppose the tapster could say this honest boon companion tells me so. On the other hand, and in which case the first would be saying the next line. But if I wonder if it is tells me, it could be tells ye or something, in which because it would be more logical. I mean, there's no need for anybody to tell the second thief that he can be believed.
Aliki.
I'm also not sure what the meaning of if I will requite thee well for that, if that these hands and blade of mine do last, because the mention of the blade makes it sound as if he's saying, I'll pay you back for saying that, I'll fight you.
Whereas the rest that's about that's about the robbery, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the other interpretation. Yeah. I'm not, because of the incompleteness, I'm not persuaded by either version.
Yeah. No, you're right. It could be interpreted that way. Yeah, I'll get you if the sword holds out. Yeah. But it doesn't make much sense in there because nobody said anything particularly offensive, unless, of course, that whole thing is sarcastic. But then why would they be doing that? I mean, it's in their interest to have the tapster believing them.
Or is it a falling out among thieves?
Yeah.
Because if it's the first, it could be, I will requite thee, or either of them saying to the tapster, I will requite thee for this credit that you are offering us if we are successful in this tip of someone to rob.
Yeah.
Yes, that works too.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, all of that section pretty much after the smoking gambit, all of the speech prefixes are up for grabs. As to who's actually speaking or not. I mean, I have to say, I did latch onto the tobacco moment because I went, oh, that's more tobacco business we can play with. There's often these interesting little tobacco scenes that we can play with. Other thoughts from the room on this one, Eric?
Well, there is also that sort of elaborate soldierly how to smoke tobacco scene in Wine, Ale, and Beer, or whatever that was, which was quite a short interlude, but always fun. Unless you don't get all the references, which is hard. Well, because there were so many references that you have to know about food to get.
Yes, and of course Ben Johnson brings up tobacco, and we got lots of tobacco. We got it everywhere. It's but yes, there is big tobacco lobbying sometimes. Every so often, people really go for it. And once again, we've had elsewhere, this idea of drinking tobacco that we've had. Just before I go to Lois, do we feel it's exceeding mangy? We got this weird word MAING with something lost, and I was thinking that this particular weed is a particularly mangy one. Anyway, Lois.
Selling duff backy.
Yeah. Well, I was interested in this bit about the name. I mean, the tapster does keep calling the second one Master George, and I wonder if there's some significance in the fact that he does know his name, and because then at the very end, you get the first tapster saying, "Is he not acquainted with thee well?" And I don't know if that's an exclamation or whether it's a question, and then the second one presumably feels that somebody or other told him his name, obviously somebody in a bawdy house, which must be where they met. I don't know. It's an odd bit, but I think he obviously doesn't like the idea of his name being known.
Yes, because he then goes off on a sexual violence kick. It's interesting also just because there's part of my mind just sort of interconnecting of texts where I'm sort of going, it's Master George. He's a bit rakish. He goes out. Oh, is it the sort of the dramatization of the merry jests of George Peele, because it
yeah.
sort of fits in a weird way. If you you think that this whole thing is a bit of a sort of silliness. I don't think he'd go quite that far, however, even in his fictive form. Alan.
I'm just wondering whether the George is the barman's old trick of just pick a random name, and he got bored with using Tom, Dick, and Harry.
I think it does. I think he obviously does know him in some fashion. And yeah.
Yeah, well, they met in a bawdy house. Yeah,
they met in a bawdy house. And he knows his name.
Right names may not be given.
So yeah, it's as I say, it's something of a shame that we don't have more of it, because it does sort of it has some interesting life to it. And as ever, I'll be looking for options of how to expand it and record it sometime for the podcast going forward. Any additional thoughts? I'll go for any mini final thoughts around the room. Elizabeth, any additional thoughts?
It was a bit too little to really make a conclusion. I know it's a fragment, and we have to kind of like expound on what we've got, but I just felt a sense of like we just needed more. Apart from the tobacco part, which I thought was just like was funny for the time, very anachronistic. I just thought that it wasn't enough to go on. I'm not sure what to make of it. I like the atmosphere that's created.
Lois, any final thoughts?
Well, not really. I thought it was quite entertaining, and I love the idea of it being a dramatization of the merry jests of George Peele. I've no idea whether that would work, but there's plenty of material in the merry jests, and it could well be that there were plays that just hung these things together, because I don't know if we'll ever come across Cavendish's pleasant and merry humor of a rogue, but that is basically just a series of scenes in which a rogue does roguish things.
Alan, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, with something this short and this damaged, it's very difficult to do it. I mean, what it's got there, it does work quite nicely, but you're just thinking, what was round it?
Well, yes, because we can write something to go around it. I mean, that's the great thing. These are lovely leaping off points. I'm always fond, and also just sometimes just putting them randomly together in a sort of avant-garde fashion always appeals. Aliki, any thoughts what we might do with Master Tapster?
I would quite enjoy subverting it all kinds of ways. Actually, the Tapster knows George's name because he and George are in on it, and they're about to fleece the other guy from the robbery, something like that.
Yes, it's who's conning who? Where does the con begin and where does the con end? Yes, Eric.
Well, it could be a con within a con. We've seen this before. Where you've got like sort of oh yeah, we'll pay thee when we come back. It's like, yeah, totally. Well, and then in the honor of like vices betraying each other, they will just sort of one will hand over sort of the other to the law. So I don't know, maybe that's just me.
Right, I think I've gone round once. So that's it for this little fragment, but it will return. It will almost certainly return on the podcast in, actually probably might even appear around about the time this video actually appears. There's quite a long lead time for these videos being released. But in fact, this video might appear in audio form as part of that podcast as well. It's all very confusing. But I'm sure I will record it in some way, shape or form and hunt for other ways for which it can be revived. All that remains to thank all the wonderful readers for all their wonderful reading. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye. He takes tobacco and chokes.